What's up, guys? So I had a question about, what can I carry over to my push-ups to make them better? A lot of you guys are training out at home, and I thought it was an interesting question because oftentimes the little things that some of us tend to overlook are some of the biggest questions out there. And in this case, body weight exercises body weight exercises I think are perceived and deemed to be easy, and they don't have to be, just like anything else. If you know a little bit about your body and you know how to make things hard, you can literally make anything challenging and you can make anything beneficial. In this case, the push-up. So let's talk about the push-up. First off, what's the push-up for? Let's be really clear about why we're doing it. Well, for most of us out there, we're probably not just doing a push-up to do a push-up, we're probably doing it to train our chest in some way, shape, or form. And we're talking about just the traditional push-up here. You, the ground, your hands, and that's it. Nothing else, no other applications, nothing like a band. All right, so the traditional push-up for most of us out there is for our chest. We're doing some sort of chest training. Realize, just like the dumbbells, just like the barbells, okay, it's just like any other pressing motion, just inverted. Instead of you lying on a bench and having support here, now you're facing the floor and your only support is your hands on the ground. So it's a less stable exercise overall, which makes it, in my opinion, a little bit more neurologically complex, which is a benefit. It can make it a little bit harder than the stable environment that you're used to. So how do I set this exercise up to execute it at a higher level to make it more biased toward my pecs? You have to be mindful about what do the pecs actually do so that you can put them in a position to succeed. So let's talk about where the pecs kind of start. They start and originate kind of here on the sternum. At least those are the ones that most of you guys are setting up and trying to bias. Do we have them attaching somewhat here? Yeah. Do we have them attaching somewhat here? But it's a big muscle that spans a large origin, okay? They go and they span in this direction and cross over the shoulder joint and attach to the upper part of the humerus or the upper arm, okay? So where my upper arm is in space is going to define how contracted or how stretched my chest is actually getting. What is the benefit of the push-up? In this case, if I'm starting in this joint stack position, which is me at the top of my push-up, and I'm starting to let that upper arm go out and out and out and away and away and away and away in this motion, you can see my pecs are getting lengthened. And as they're getting lengthened more and more and more, my body weight being suspended more and more because this lever is getting longer is making the bottom most loaded and most hard. So your biggest bang for your buck is spending a lot of time and having a lot of intensity awareness in this bottom position. Make it as challenging as possible. You have opportunities to do partials or holds or isometrics. Your creativity is the only limitation to that exercise. But you also have versatility to this exercise. If I know that I am lengthening, if I know that everything that is basically in line with my humerus at this point in time is probably what's biased most in the stretch, well, I have an opportunity to bias different parts of my pecs if I want to get creative there, right? And this is a little bit of an advanced approach, but it helps you with having an awareness of what you're doing. So for the most part, this is the part of my pec that I'm biasing with my humerus being this angle, the traditional style of push-up. If I start to dip my arm a little bit, okay, now it's kind of more in this line. So maybe I'm biasing more in this part of my pecs. All of my pecs are still working, but maybe the most vulnerable part is here. And if I dip a little bit more toward like your narrow style push-up, okay, now maybe it's more of this upper pec position, okay? And if I dip it more, maybe it's now more into front delts, okay? So the more we could argue that I start to dip this upper arm, the benefit is that I'm possibly, if this is the first that I can stretch, like literally this is the farthest my shoulder joint and humerus want to move in this position. But as I dip more, I'm able to pull it back more. And as I dip more, I'm able to pull it back more. So I can get more of this kind of retraction, which can be a benefit. I'm able to stretch more things on the anterior and front side of my body. However, the more that I dip this humerus, I'm possibly allowing more muscles to be primary movers, like your front delts or your triceps, for example, for a couple of them, okay? So it's not isolated so much to just the pecs. So with everything you gain, you're probably taking away a little bit at the same time. But if you have a part of your chest that you're trying to bias, your humeral angle is going to define probably what works the most. Now I want to wrap this video up, but before I do, I want to stress how important setup is to push-ups. Don't be that person that screws your setup up prior to the set. That takes away the benefit of the exercise of trying to maximize that function of the pecs that we just talked about before. And that setup a lot of times is screwed up with hand position. So realize, like think about this, okay? Think about this. If I'm doing a dumbbell press, okay, I would never do a dumbbell press like this, laying on my back, or like this, lying on my back. I see a lot of people that will set up in this position where their hands are literally above their shoulder joint and do a push-up this way. And they wonder why it's so challenging, or just feels like, you know, just this grinding going on. It doesn't feel natural or comfortable. It's because your setup is off. Joints should be stacked, okay? Whatever part of my pecs, if I'm trying to get the meat of my pecs to actually train, my load actually has to be going through that part of the pecs. My body weight has to be going through that part of the pecs. And it needs to be in the finishing position that I would finish in a bench press or a dumbbell press or a barbell press or anything of that nature, okay? In this position. This is where my hands should be, all right? So that's one setup tool there. That's your standard push-up. In addition, you have a couple options. If your body weight's too heavy, you can always kneel down on your knees and do the old girl-style gym class push-up. That's just fine. That's just taking load away from the exercise, okay? If you want to make it more advanced, a lot of people are doing push-ups where let's talk about your feet, okay? So have the visual of your feet, where your heels are shifted way back behind your toes, if that makes sense, all right? And then again, what that does is if I'm here and I shift back on the back of my feet, it raises my hands slightly, okay, by getting my shoulders behind my hands. If I'm wanting to make this as challenging as possible, if I get out on my tippy toes and I get really heavy there, I'm suspending all the load of my body weight out over that push-up, and it makes it super, super challenging. Why I like the push-up over regular implements of pressing is the freedom that it gives to your shoulder blades. Your shoulder blades are meant to move forward and back and up and down and tilt forward and tilt back. That bone is meant to have freedom. And sometimes when we get fixated on applications with a back pad, it does end up being a limitation to that freedom, which could make for limitations and weakness in our pecs long term. So the one thankful thing that I'm grateful for now is that since a lot of us don't have an opportunity to have those same applications, we're forced to do things like push-ups. And what push-ups are doing is they're going to allow our traps on our back to literally get closer into a shortened position and a lengthened position, right? More of a shortened position, more of a lengthened position. And that's super beneficial from a functionality standpoint. It's opening up new ranges of motion, creating strength in these new ranges of motion. And long term, if you're able to create strength in new ranges of motion, that's an opportunity for more joint integrity, more strength, and if it's a goal of yours, more tissue. So I hope this video has helped to create some clarity to the push-up. Like every single exercise application, you have the opportunity to be as in-depth with your focus as you'd like to be on an exercise, or as basic. But it always starts with the foundation of what muscle am I trying to train? What does that muscle do? And how can I take that function and carry it over to the application of the push-up in this example?